program, maybe you should consider a different career path. The military isn't really built for people like you." The recruitment officer's dismissive words echo through the enlistment center as 18-year-old Sarah Mitchell sits across from his desk. Her small frame and quiet demeanor apparently convincing him she's unsuitable for service. Around the office, other recruits, mostly large, confident young men, are being fast-tracked through processing while she's being steered toward clerical positions. None of them could imagine that this underestimated teenager would one day become the most decorated female combat veteran of her generation. What happens next will show you that true strength isn't measured in muscle mass or loud voices, but in the courage to keep going when everyone expects you to quit. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in the power of proving doubters wrong, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been told you weren't cut out for something you knew you could do? This journey will inspire you to never give up on yourself. Sarah Mitchell had wanted to be a soldier since she was 12 years old. But at 18, standing 5'2" and weighing barely 110 pounds, she didn't look like anyone's idea of a warrior. The recruitment office in her small Ohio town felt like enemy territory as she sat across from Sergeant Williams, a large man who seemed more interested in discouraging her than enlisting her. "Look, sweetheart," he said, not unkindly but with obvious condescension, "the Army has changed a lot, but combat roles are still physically demanding. Have you considered the Air Force? They have nice administrative positions that might be a better fit." Sarah had prepared for this conversation. "I want combat arms," she said quietly but firmly. "Infantry or armor. I've been training for 2 years. Running, weightlifting, martial arts. I can do this." Sergeant Williams glanced at her slight build and suppressed a smile. "Honey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I can tell who's going to make it and who's going to wash out. Basic training alone will break someone your size. Why put yourself through that when there are other ways to serve?" But Sarah had already made her decision long before walking into this office. Her grandfather had been a World War II paratrooper, her father a Vietnam veteran. Service wasn't just a career choice for her. It was a calling that everyone seemed determined to talk her out of. The next 18 months proved the doubters right in some ways and spectacularly wrong in others. Basic training was brutal for Sarah, while her male counterpart struggled with the mental pressure and discipline. She fought a daily battle against physical standards designed for larger, stronger bodies. Every run was a race against elimination. Every obstacle course was a test of whether sheer determination could overcome obvious physical limitations. Her drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, pulled no punches. "Mitchell, you're holding back your entire platoon. Maybe the recruitment office made a mistake letting you through." Other recruits started to see her as a liability. During team exercises, some would openly complain about being paired with her. A few tried to be protective, which somehow felt even worse than the criticism. But Sarah had something that raw physical strength couldn't provide: an absolute refusal to quit. When she couldn't complete pull-ups with perfect form, she did them in smaller sets throughout the day until she'd done twice the required number. When she struggled with heavy equipment carries, she practiced with sandbags during her free time until her technique compensated for her size disadvantage. By graduation, she'd earned grudging respect from some classmates and outright admiration from others. But the real tests were still ahead. Advanced infantry training brought new challenges and new doubters. Her company commander, Captain Hayes, was a traditionalist who believed women had no place in combat roles, regardless of policy changes. "Private Mitchell," he announced during her first week, "I want you to understand something. Standards don't change just because the politicians change the rules. If you can't keep up, you'll be transferred to a support role where you can actually contribute." Sarah's response was the same as always: quiet determination backed by relentless preparation. She studied tactics while others relaxed. She practiced weapons handling during off hours. She ran extra miles because she knew she had to be better than good enough to be considered adequate. The breaking point came during a field exercise designed to simulate combat conditions. Sarah's squad was tasked with a nighttime reconnaissance mission in difficult terrain. When their radio operator was injured during insertion, Sarah volunteered to carry the additional weight of the communication equipment on top of her regular gear. The mission went sideways when they encountered an unexpected enemy force during the exercise. What was supposed to be reconnaissance became simulated combat, and Sarah found herself in a leadership position when her squad leader was marked as a casualty by exercise controllers. That's when everything she'd trained for came together. Sarah's small size, which everyone saw as a weakness, became an advantage in urban terrain. She could move through spaces others couldn't access. Her voice, often criticized as too soft for command, proved perfect for coordinating quiet movements in close proximity to simulated enemies. Her attention to detail, developed through months of compensating for physical limitations, allowed her to spot tactical opportunities that others missed. By the end of the exercise, her squad had completed their primary mission and eliminated twice as many simulated enemy forces as any other unit. The after-action review was conducted in front of the entire company. Captain Hayes looked uncomfortable as he read the results. Private Mitchell's squad achieved 100% mission success with 0 friendly casualties. Her tactical decisions and leadership under pressure were exemplary, but the real validation came from her squad mates. These were the same soldiers who had doubted her capabilities just weeks earlier. "Ma'am," said Specialist Johnson, a former college football player who towered over Sarah, "I owe you an apology. You saved our asses out there. I've never seen anyone read terrain and tactical situations like that." The transformation wasn't immediate, but word spread. Sarah Mitchell might not look like a typical infantry soldier, but she could do the job better than most. Her reputation began to precede her. When deployment orders came for Afghanistan, Sarah was assigned to a forward operating base in one of the most dangerous regions of the country. Once again, she faced skepticism from new unit members who hadn't worked with her before. The platoon sergeant, a veteran of 3 previous deployments, took one look at Sarah and shook his head. "Great, they're sending us children now. Stay close to me, kid, and try not to get anyone killed." But Afghanistan wasn't a training exercise. The enemy didn't care about anyone's preconceptions or biases. They cared about results, and Sarah consistently delivered them. Her first patrol was supposed to be a gentle introduction to combat operations. It became a 12-hour running battle when their convoy was ambushed in a narrow valley. Sarah's vehicle was hit by an IED, leaving her driver unconscious and her gunner wounded. Without hesitation, Sarah took control of the situation. She pulled both men from the damaged vehicle under enemy fire, administered first aid to the wounded gunner, and then returned to the fight with a coolness that impressed seasoned combat veterans. The platoon sergeant later told anyone who would listen, "I've been in the army for 15 years, and I've never seen a soldier handle their first real combat like that. She didn't panic, didn't freeze, didn't make rookie mistakes. She just did her job like she'd been doing it for years." Over the next 8 months, Sarah participated in over 60 combat operations. She was wounded twice but refused evacuation both times. She saved the lives of 4 fellow soldiers in separate incidents, earning her a Bronze Star with V device for valor and 2 Purple Hearts. But statistics only told part of the story. The real measure of Sarah's impact was in how she changed the perceptions of everyone who served with her. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, her battalion commander, included a note in her fitness report that would follow her throughout her career. "Private First Class Mitchell has redefined my understanding of what makes an effective infantry soldier. Physical strength matters, but it's not the only thing that matters. Her tactical acumen, leadership under pressure, and absolute commitment to mission accomplishment make her one of the finest soldiers I've had the privilege to command." By the time Sarah returned from her first deployment, the conversation had completely changed. Instead of questioning whether she belonged in combat roles, commanders were requesting her for the most challenging assignments. Her second deployment to Iraq saw her promoted to sergeant and given her own squad to lead. Her third deployment to Afghanistan came with staff sergeant stripes and a E reputation that preceded her throughout the theater of operations. The recruitment officer who had tried to steer her away from combat roles happened to be visiting her forward operating base during her final deployment. Sergeant Williams didn't recognize her at first. The confident combat leader bore little resemblance to the quiet teenager he'd met years earlier, when someone pointed out that this was the same Sarah Mitchell he'd once counseled toward administrative roles. His face went red with embarrassment. Sarah approached him after his briefing, her uniform displaying the ribbons and badges she'd earned through 5 combat deployments. "Sergeant Williams," she said with a slight smile. "Remember me? You suggested I consider the Air Force for administrative work." He looked at her combat infantry badge, her bronze star, her purple hearts, and the ranger tab she'd earned during a break between deployments. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about everything." Sarah's response surprised him. "You weren't wrong to be concerned about standards," she said. "Standards matter, but you were wrong about how to measure someone's ability to meet them. Size and strength are just 2 factors among many. You forgot to account for determination, intelligence, and the willingness to work harder than anyone else." After 22 years of service, Sarah retired as a Command Sergeant Major, one of the highest-ranking female combat veterans in Army history. Her final assignment was developing training programs to help identify and develop soldiers who might be overlooked by traditional assessment methods. At her retirement ceremony, dozens of soldiers she'd mentored over the years attended to pay their respects. Many of them had been underestimated themselves for their size, their background, their quiet demeanor, or other factors that had nothing to do with their actual capabilities. In her retirement speech, Sarah addressed the packed auditorium with the same quiet confidence that had carried her through decades of proving doubters wrong. "I learned something important during my first day of basic training," she said. "The people who tell you that you can't do something aren't necessarily wrong about the challenges you'll face. They're just wrong about your ability to overcome them. The only person who truly knows what you're capable of is you, but even you won't know until you're tested by circumstances that push you beyond what you thought possible." She looked out at the audience, knowing that many of them were still fighting their own battles against assumptions and low expectations. Strength isn't just physical. Courage isn't just loud. Leadership isn't just commanding. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who look weakest to those who don't know how to see. Sometimes the bravest warriors are the ones who had to fight for the right to fight in the first place. Sarah Mitchell never did get bigger or taller or louder, but she proved that in the crucible of combat, heart matters more than height, and determination can overcome almost any disadvantage. The war didn't just prove her strength, it revealed that strength had been there all along, waiting for the right circumstances to show itself.